Someone's alarm, 10 o'clock. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to our monthly commercial boot camp with today's topic. It is on retail shopping center. I see a lot of new faces here, so I'm going to make a quick introduction. My name is Cindy Vo. I have been in loan origination and processor back in 2005 for 5 years before I transitioned myself into title industry as an escrow officer and CE instructor for almost 2 decades. And so recently I have made a drastic decision to transition full-time into commercial real estate for 3 months now. My passion has always about teaching. And again, I have been teaching CE credits for realtors before for so many years. And I see that there's a need in the commercial industry. A lot of realtors, especially the residential realtors, want to learn more about commercial. And so that's why the end of last year, I partnered up with Daniel Ng, and we decided to have a full year schedule of commercial trainings for those residential realtors to learn more on the commercial side, right? So thank you for coming. Monthly, again, next month, we are talking about hotel. So before I start the class, I want you all to empty your brain right now because it's going to be a lot of information, especially for the topic today. So after the training, we're going to have some guest speakers coming up, and then we're going to grab lunch, and then we're going to take everyone on a site tour. Okay, are you ready? All right. Okay, so the agenda for today is first, I'm going to start up with what is commercial retail property, and then what is a retail store. We're going to have Mr. Davis Wong speak about commercial loans specifically for retail. And then I'll go over the commercial contracts so you can see how you should be filling out the contracts when it comes to retail. We're going to have guest speakers, and then we're going to, again, do lunch and then the tour. Okay, and there's the address for the tour. So let's go ahead and start. What is commercial retail property? So today's topic is a little different versus the other previous commercial classes, because when it comes to retail, there's retail property and retail stores, right? There's real estate involved with a sell, buy and sell transactions. And then there's also a leasing part, right? With the tenants and landlord. So we're going to be covering both of that aspects today. So let's start with what is retail property? Retail property is commercial real estate zoned and used for selling consumer goods and services directly or providing entertainment to the public. In addition to shops, a retail property might also include space for restaurants and offices. Okay. Single-tenant buildings, such as big box stores, multi-tenant structures, usually anchored by a lead tenant, pad sites with multiple single-tenant structures, such as a bank, pharmacy, or restaurant. Okay, so this is what a retail property is with real estate involved. Okay. What are the types of retail properties? I know we hear a lot of, shopping centers and retails and restaurants, right? That's the norm. But you'd be amazed of there are over a dozen types of retails out there. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and I know you're going to have a lot of questions. Write down your questions, and then we're going to answer at the end of the class. Okay, because there's a lot of information to cover. So the first type is malls. What is considered as malls? There's a couple of types of malls, subcategory. Regional mall is usually between 400 to 800,000 square feet. Okay. Then there's a super regional mall, over 800,000 square feet. It's usually considered as multiple large anchor department stores like Macy's or Dillard's. Generally enclosed and has a large parking lot. Draw in customers between 5 to 15-mile radius. That's the type of customers. Okay. The second type is shopping center and strip mall. You're going to be dealing with majority of this, okay? Generally less than 30,000 square feet, 1 or 2 large anchor retail stores. So what is anchor? That's mean big tenants, right? Strong, long-term. For example, Starbucks. Starbucks usually sign at least 10 to 20 years term, okay? When it comes to Starbucks leases, usually they will pay a lower rent. We're going to discuss more, but now we talk about Starbucks, so I want to share a little bit more about Starbucks. Usually for the leases for the Starbucks, it's going to be a little lower than the market price. But as a landlord, they can work out a term where they can also get part of the profit from the anchor tenants, okay? So yeah, so sometimes when we look at the current lease right now, we see the rental leases are like very low. Like, why is Starbucks only paid $16 per square foot versus neighbor next door is like 30, right? That's because the landlord has worked out a term with them where every single year, every single month, whatever profit that Starbucks is getting, they're paying the landlord a certain amount, a percentage. Okay, interesting, right? So when you have money, invest in Starbucks. No, I love Starbucks. Parking lot generally located in front of the stores, draw in customers usually from about a mile or less radius. Okay. After you learn about different types of retail properties, you're going to learn about classifications of retail properties, and then break it down to different tenants as well, okay? When you as an agent representing your clients, and I will share more detail throughout the slides, the presentation too, is when you're representing your clients, whether as a tenant or landlord rep or, you know, buying and sell, there are some things on there that you need to know and understand and terminologies as well, okay? So I just want to give the heads up. The third type is community retail center. So what is a community center? It's usually between 150 to 350,000 square feet, multiple anchor stores, including grocery stores, drug stores, and restaurants, drawing customers between 3 to 6 miles radius, okay? Power center, interesting, right? Power center, it is also considered as retail. It's usually between 250,000 to 600,000 square feet, 75% to 90% dedicated to anchor stores, generally located near interstate highways, drawing customers between 5 to 10 mile radius, okay? Fashion center. Fashion center is defined by having several high fashion retail stores with famous, well-known brands like Neiman Marcus, okay? Gucci store. It's usually between 80,000 to 200,000 square feet, 250,000 square feet, drawing customers from 5 to 15 mile radius. Factory outlets is primarily for clothing manufacturers and retailers to locate their outlet stores with some household brands. Outlet stores are where brands sell products that may have been overstocked, closed out, or reduced in price for several different reasons. They are ranging between 50,000 to 400,000 square feet, draws in customer from 25 to 75 mile radius, right? Or like San Marcos, it's far away, but we still drive there. Okay, so the location, I mean, the radius is not the most important thing because it would draw in customers for this kind of type. Out parcel involves parcels of land that are part of a larger piece of property. These parcels are then leased out to individual retail tenants. Okay, so it could be land too, or considered, okay, and this type. Big box retailers are mega stores, bless you, that takes up a lot of square footage and dominate a shopping center. For example, Costco or Sam's Club. These are big box retailers. It's about 30,000 to 200,000 square feet, only one large store, right? So whenever you see Costco, it's just by itself, standalone building, okay? Draws in customer will vary significantly depending on the location, okay? freestanding retail, similar to big box retailer, but is instead based around smaller, well-known retailers, for example, Walgreens or CVS. Draws in customers and size depends on the brand, okay? Convenience retail. You're gonna see this a lot too. It's the smallest form of strip mall, generally only having a couple stores with a small on-site parking area, for example, like 7-Eleven, less than 30,000 square feet, draws in customer in less than 1 mile radius. And then it's mixed use. So before, we don't see a lot of mixed use, okay? Nowadays, it's becoming more trendy, okay? So mixed use is the commercial real estate property that combines any of the above types that we've listed. Usually when you go into a mixed use property, you will see apartment complex, hotels, retails, all that combined, at least 2 out of the 8 or 10 commercial types in a combination, okay? Usually it starts out in Texas, it's in Austin. You will see a lot, first level is retails, and then multi is upstairs, right? Upper levels, because they try to save space. But now you can see there's a trend in that development. If you can see the Legacy North, you know, Rockwall, you know, other areas that are start booming, that is now a trend now. So as an investor's perspective, mixed use is better for them at the right location, especially out in the, people would normally call like the la land out there, but it's going up north right now. So some people cannot afford, like, of course, Frisco is way too expensive and probably no more land. Anna, Melissa, but continue to go up north where they know the market and the real estate is going to start booming going up north, right? They will get a nice piece of land out there. They will start developing, and then they're going to turn to a mixed use. Okay, and normally start with what? Walmart. Every new subdivision you see out there is next to Walmart, right? But that's in the trend right now. And usually for new mixed use developments, they always aiming for Class A. And we'll go into details about the classifications, okay? The size and specs of a mixed use property can vary significantly. Access each unique piece of mixed use property based on the 2 or more types that is combined. So it's a combination. Types 12 is theme and festival center. It's a piece of commercial real estate that's strictly leisure, tourist, or retail with the caveat that is, it has stores under the umbrella of a single theme. For example, Universal Studio. Surprisingly, but that also is under the retail property type, right? Who would think that would be a retail? Because we're always thinking about shopping and restaurants and all that stuff. So there's a lot of very unique things that we learned today under retail category. It usually ranges between 80,000 to 250,000 excuse me, square feet, generally only in very urban areas near historic districts, entertainment centers, and amusement parks. A specific type of entertainment, such as an aquarium or zoo, might serve as the anchor. I know you're doing the same thing. I'm like, huh? Okay. Draws in customers from 25 to 75 mile radius. I put this kind of toward the end because it's very interesting, right? Okay. So there are 12 different types of retail properties. Do we remember already? Okay, so classifications. When it comes to commercial real estate or commercial properties, you need to understand classifications in general, okay? A, B, and C. That's it, A, B, and C. But how do we classify that as either A, B, and C? So normally it is depends on the age of the building, the location, finishes, amenities, condition, rental rates, and sales price. This applies to all commercial, okay? So for today, retail, let's discuss into deeper about the classification. So Class A tend to be new or like new condition and don't require any major renovations. usually less than 10 years old, okay? Typically located in or near the central business districts and or most desirable locations of major cities. Their locations are highly visible and have high traffic counts for both vehicles and pedestrians. Have the most luxurious finishes, newest technology, and strongest amenity packages, including, but not limiting to, marble floors, high-speed internet, outdoor patios with fantastic views. It may be highly energy efficient, as evidenced by LED certification, command the highest rents, and are affordable to the most profitable companies or highest income earners. Considered to be the least risky investment class due to their physical condition and stable cash flow supported by their high earning tenant base. On a per unit or per square foot basis, they also command the highest sales prices with cap rates typically in the 4 to 5% range. Okay, so that's Class A. You need to understand all different types of classifications because when you're dealing with your clients, and we will talk more about that, later on, depends on who your clients are. If you know they're big investor, big companies out there, you're not going to try to find them any property that's considered as Class B or C, right? You're just going to be aiming for Class A. And a lot of Class A now are like super high rents. You're talking about $40 per square foot, not including the triple net. It's crazy. So it is in a trend right now. A lot of developers are starting focusing in retail, but even warehouse, like industrial that we took a tour, is like, Class A is all about Class A now. If they develop, it's all Class A. Okay, and usually for brand new development construction project, they are considered as Class A because they're brand new, unless the materials they put in it is, not as expensive, right? But you're aiming for the Class A clients, okay? Class B tends to be in good condition with fully functioning mechanical and HVAC systems, but may need light repairs or modernization. Usually between 10 and 20 years old and typically located in good but not great markets. Okay, lower rents than Class A and are typically within reach of small to medium businesses and median income earners. On a per unit or per square foot basis, sales prices are lower than Class A properties, and returns consist of a mix of price appreciation and income. Okay, location, location, location. So even if you build a Class A building, but not in a desirable location, from what you call a Class A building now could become Class B building, okay? So it needs to have all the check mark. The materials that you put inside, the desirable location, brand new, right? So that's why you need all of those for a Class A in order to get the most rent out of it, okay? And of course, common sense is usually for tenants to come in and they're willing to pay the price range for the Class A are usually the one that's not brand new in the business, right? They're usually long-term and less risk of going bankrupt, right? Because if they can afford that kind of price range, that's a different type of tenants that you're gonna have. So Class C, common sense at the end, older vintage with dated finishes that likely need to be replaced because they are either obsolete or non-functioning, in fair condition and likely require repairs or upgrades to mechanical systems like roofs, parking lots, HVAC, or plumbing. Between 20 and 30 years old and are typically located in less desirable areas that are far from major highways, shopping districts, employment centers, and public transportation. Have lower rents than Class B and typically within reach for small companies and hourly workers. On a per square foot or per unit basis, buildings in Class C are less expensive than Class B, but they carry an elevated level of risk due to the capital investment required, and vulnerable nature of tenants' income sources. However, they often present an attractive opportunity for investors with an elevated risk tolerance and the operational expertise to execute a modernization program. Okay, so if you work with investors, most of them will go for Class C. Okay, because if for those experienced investors, most of the time they either own their own construction company already, or they have partners that's in the construction company. So they would like to purchase a Class C building at a lower price, go in there, fix it up, right? And with the Class C type, sometimes it's not necessarily mean it's just a distressed empty building. It could have full tenants there, but because it's not new, the rent is lower, you can always go in from an investor perspective, fix it up and increase the rent, right? Or sometimes there's also opportunity to add on, okay? So like we have a property, let's say in Lancaster. People think Lancaster is not a great location. This is fully occupied, but then there's a piece of land right next to it. Not a piece of land, but there's a portion right next to it that can easily be built a gas station and convenience store add-on, for example, but it's on a great location, okay? So if you work with investors, add on some of that aspects also, because that's what mostly they're going to be looking at, okay? So either good clients, Class A, okay? Mid clients, Class B, investors, Class C. Okay, get it? Okay, so what are some of the factors to consider in a shopping center investment? With a retail investment, one of the biggest factors to weigh is the property's location. You guys been in real estate, you know this by now. It's location, 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 right? Aside from that, potential investors should consider. So remember these 3 bullet points, because you're going to be working with a lot of investors, especially when it comes to retail, okay? Sell, buy, sell. The tenant mix. Is the mix of tenants consistent with the theme of the shopping center and the demand in the current market? When it comes to retail shopping center, tenants are very important. Who are your tenants, right? How long have they been in the business? So as a landlord, sometimes you would get this asked if you're representing the tenants. The landlord's going to want to know, who are your clients? What's the name of the business? How long they've been in business, right? Because from a landlord perspective, including yourself, let's say you're the landlord, you want to make sure the tenants sign up the lease and stay there and not breaking the lease. So that's very important as well. And just because they're smaller business doesn't mean that they're not good tenants, right? Parking. Adequate parking is an incredibly important component of a retail property's success. The size of the parking lots must be commensurate with the size of the center. Now, especially when it comes to Class C, because it's Class C is why? It's older building. Now, the building codes may change, right? So if you're buying a building, an old building, let's say 30, 40 years ago, they may only require certain parking space. But now, and it's okay because a landlord has been there for 30 years, for example. But if the property has now been sold to the new owner, you're going to have to go through all the process. You're going to have to get the city's permits. You're going to have to get the certificate of occupancy, right? So now the city is like, well, we need to add more parking space. Or we need you guys to fix this and fix that, right? So that's why they had this category in the factors is parking. Competition. Retail is a very competitive space, and it is not unusual for there to be several shopping centers with the same primary trade area. This means that investors should consider the unique advantages of their target center and determine if they provide an advantage over the competition, right? So let's just say, for example, there could be 2 different shopping centers. 2 shopping retails in the same building. But then one could be selling high-end fashion. The other one is outlet, for example, right? So you still drawing in different clients, different customers. So sometimes that's not a real competition. For example, another example, I don't know, let's see. There's a dentist, right? And then there's also a orthodontist next door. The dentist may do some orthodontal work, but they're not specialized in it. But on the other hand, if they have an orthodontist moving next door, there's also the collaboration, right? So maybe at some point they could be competitors, but then they also could be partners down the road as well. So don't look at it as like, boom, okay, well, there's a chiro office already. I'm not gonna go in if I'm a chiro, right? So it depends on that aspect. So what are pros of investing in retail real estate? There are several pros. Potential for high returns. When you invest in retail and commercial real estate, you could obtain an annual return of 6 to 12%. In comparison, the average annual return for investments in residential properties is around 2 to 5%. Big difference, right? But the more you invest, more return, right? More risk. If you can afford the investment in retail, real estate can significantly increase the value of your portfolio without causing you to take on high amounts of risk. But that's one of the pros. Hours of operation limits. You also benefit from limiting hours of operation. Most businesses and retail spaces close at night, which means that managing the property won't be all-day endeavor. While there's a possibility of fire alarms or break-ins at night, you can avoid issues like tenants calling at midnight because they lost their key. Okay, so these are the comparisons between investing in commercial versus residential. Another one, lengthy leases. In most cases, the average tenancy contract in a residential building is around 6 to 12 months, right? In comparison, commercial tenancy lasts for around 3 to 10 years. Remember, I mentioned earlier, if it comes to Starbucks, they usually sign a 20-year lease, okay? It's also common for commercial tenants to stay even longer than the original contract if they've invested money into improving and customizing the space. So when you look at the lease agreements, usually it will have, let's say for Starbucks, 20 years plus an option to renew for another 20 years. Okay, so we go in detail when it comes to the lease sample. Another benefit is small deposit requirements. Investing in retail real estate can be done without paying an exorbitant sum of money. For instance, smaller retail spaces can be purchased for as low as $90,000 to $100,000, the business. In comparison, smaller apartments cost at least $300,000. If you never made a commercial real estate investment before now, placing your money into retail real estate is a great way to enter the market. Okay. Residential nowadays for investments, I believe you have to put in like 25 to 30% for investment property for residential, right? Usually a lot of investors will go through what is called the DSCR program, okay? But for commercial, it depends, but usually about 20% is feasible unless it's owner occupied, which is also called the SBA, Small Business Administration. That means that the business owner has to occupy at least 51% of the building space. Then they can qualify for the SBA loan. And with SBA loan, the down payment is only between 10 and 15%. Okay. But even though the percentage of down payment may be less, the amount is higher because when it comes to commercial, you're talking about a couple $1 million versus a few $100,000, right? So there's a lot of different things. Okay, so what are some of the cons for investing in retail real estate? First is ample time commitment. If you invest in a retail building with around 5 tenants, you need to perform extensive management. The many tasks that must be completed include, this is for you guys if you do property management, handling multiple leases, making annual common area maintenance adjustments. Common area maintenance, remember this, also called CAM. You need to know this word, CAM. You're going to hear that a lot when it comes to commercial. CAM is common area maintenance, okay? additional maintenance issues, handling public safety concerns, etc. You can't be a passive investor unless you hire a property management company to help you perform these tasks. Okay. So usually for an investor who owns a smaller retail shopping building, they usually don't want to hire a property manager. So they tend to do it by themselves. So these is one of the cons, right? Sensitivity to economic conditions. If the economy is currently healthy and strong, your retail investment should be high returns. In this scenario, demand for retail space will be high, which should result in market value increasing for these properties. When an economic downturn occurs, demand can fall for these properties. Residential homes don't have the same sensitivity to economic conditions, right? So everything has pros and cons, right? For a residential tenants, usually short term, like a year, they'll call you if the faucet falls out in the middle of the night, okay? And especially in our wonderful Texas heat, sometimes it goes up to 120 only, right? AC doesn't work, they'll call you in the middle of the night, okay? But less investment. Usually for an investment, property rental, let's just say average about 300,000. Even if you put in 30% down, it's about $100,000, right? So you got to weight it. When you work with investors, commercial or residential, commercial takes longer, right? But in the long run, that's why whenever you educate your investor to purchase any kind of commercial properties, especially retail, usually the investor is going to ask you a few questions only. Remember, you're dealing with business owners and investors, not homeowners with emotions attached, okay? You need to be prepared when working with them. So usually they ask you about 3 questions. Okay. How much does it cost? Okay. What is the return of profit? And this is the last thing. I don't know if you heard this before. What is my exit strategy? What does that mean? How long do I need to hold on this property to make profits before I can resell them and move on to the next project? Right? So those are the 3 questions usually they ask you, and you better know the answer. Because you can't just be like residential. Oh, well, Cindy's looking for a home in the zip code. And then you go on MLS and you search and you just start sending out emails. Okay, here, Cindy, tell me which one you want to look. And then I'll do the showing. No, you're going to have to do your due diligence. Cindy is looking for a shopping center. I got to find out all this information because I know she's going to ask me, right? And then Cindy, this is the building I found for you, the retail shopping center. These are the tenants in there. And I'm going to go in detail what you need to know. But you have to prepare to present it to me. Because when I ask you questions, you're like, well, I don't know, right? Do you know what you're doing? Right? If I'm going to put millions of dollars into this investment and I'm working with, I would prefer to work with expertise in commercial real estate. And if you don't know what you're doing, I'm not working with you, right? And if you lose that client on the first try, you're done. Okay, so well prepared. All right, well prepared. More risk. There are also a few more risks that occur when invest in retail real estate. Daniel? Oh. It just decide to pops up. Okay. Okay, let's start that over. Let's go back to slide 1. I'm just kidding. Properties used for commercial purposes will have more visitors, which means that there are several people on the property every day. You could become injured. Insurance, right? Especially retail. Retail are open to public. How many people are going to stop by your property every single day? If they fall within your boundary line, what happened? Insurance, okay? Very high. Liabilities. Some of the more common incidents that occur at retail spaces include cars hitting patrons, customers slipping on ice, and the sides of a building being spray painted by vandals. While these incidents can take place on any property, the chances of them occurring on commercial properties are higher. If you want to keep risk low in your portfolio, another type of real estate investment may be preferable. So this is one of the cons, okay? Last is challenging to find tenants. Finding the right tenants may seem simple. However, this isn't always true for retail real estate. Since these properties attract more long-term leases, finding the right tenant who wants to commit to a lengthy contract can be challenging. There are times when retail real estate will experience long vacancies. During this time, you'll be tasked with paying all costs associated and with maintaining the structure and property. Investing in retail real estate can be beneficial for your portfolio if you like to hold a long-term investment and bring in monthly returns. Before you make this investment, weigh the pros and cons to identify if this opportunity fits your portfolio risk profile. Okay. That's why they ask you, what is my exit strategy? How long do I need to hold on to it? Okay. 2 years versus 10 years. Okay. Now then the question go back is, how much do I put it in to hold it for 10 years before I see my profit? So some of the investment properties, they just need to put in a small amount of money, hold it for long term, and then resell it and make profit, right? So that's also doable because these are investors may have money, don't know what to do with it, not in a rush. I mean, I wish I have that problem, but you know, I'm working on that problem. But you know, they may not know what to do. They're not in a rush. So they were like, well, I got $1 or $2 million. I'm willing to invest. Let's just buy something like, I don't know, class C, class B, flip it, you know, rent it out. And so they have time, right? So that's different. But that's why when you prepare yourself first and then learn from your clients what they're looking for, what they're needing, and then come up with a proposal. Don't just send them deals, okay? Okay, so you as the agent representing your clients, buying or selling retail properties, what are some terminologies and things that you need to ask or know? First is a P&L. So let's say you're the buyer agent, okay? Representing Cindy buying a shopping center. You need to find out what is the P&L, profits and loss, okay? So usually on the P&L, you have other information needed. Gross income, rent rolls, leases, expenses, NOI. Gonna hear this term all day long. What are the expenses? Triple nets. Triple nets are property taxes, insurance, and what did I mention earlier? CAM, right? All of those fees are considered as triple nets. So sometimes when you look at property, they may put 1 N, 2 N's, or 3 N's. Most of the time it's 3 N's. That's triple nets, okay? And that's what it means. Gross income, right? So what is the gross income? Income that are bringing in every month, not including expenses, okay? It's important to read and review all the rent rolls because on the P&L, usually it's an Excel spreadsheet, right? They give it to you with all this numbers breakdown, and then they can tell you, well, the leases ends, you know, 5 years from now. But you gotta look at the actual leases. That may not be the case, okay? You're gonna make sure it matches, okay? Because the longer the leases that the tenants currently have, the better for your buyer. Because you don't want to come in and buy a retail center when all the leases are like expiring the end of this year, right? Then what happened? You're going to have to work on it and try to find new tenants, fill in the space, okay? So that's very important. Another terminology is NOI, net operating income. So the net operating income is gross income minus expenses. That's the number that investors are looking at. They don't care about the gross. They look at the NOI, okay? Most of you guys may work on some commercial transactions already, and then all you hear is like cap, 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 right? But from the commercial bank standpoint, they may not always look at the caps. They are more focused on the NOI. Okay. Occupancy rate, is it fully occupied? So usually you can ask them, what is the current occupancy rate, right? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? Is it 100%? What you're looking for is 100%. But again, normally in a Class C building, it's not going to be 100%. And if it is at a current 100%, then the lease is under the market price. Okay, so that's the opportunity to invest. Again, cap. What is cap? Is capitalization rate. How do you calculate the cap? Do you know? Not looking at my slide. Okay, you take the NOI and you divide it by the sales price. That's the cap. Or you take the NOI and you divide it by the appraised value of the property. That's the cap. Okay. Do we know what a good cap rate is? What's the best cap rate? In general, what's a good cap rate? The best cap rate is between 5 and 6. 4 and 5 is amazing. Average really good cap rate is 5 and 6. Okay. 10 cap rate. People think the higher the cap rate, the better. If you see anything with a 10 cap rate, that's because the rental income, the gross income is lower than the market should be. And the building is so much lower as well. Not a lot of values in the real estate part. Okay. Most ideally between 4 and 5, but normally you don't see that. Nowadays, probably between 6 and 7. The bank will not even look at it if anything over 7, unless they have much more money down, like 40% investment as the down payments. Okay, so keep that in mind. The lower the cap rate, the better. Average is between 6 and 7. Okay. So when you leave here, it's like cap. Okay. Existing survey, that is very important in any transaction, right? Whether residential or commercial, you need to look at the survey. Do we know how to read the survey? Yes, no? Come on, guys, come on, respond. Yes, no? Maybe we should host a survey class next time and show you guys how to read surveys, okay? Because it's very important, especially when it comes to commercial. Because remember, the classification is also about the size too of the property, okay? Most of the time when it comes to commercial, they are looking at the operating business and income versus the real estate side. But the real estate is also important, okay? Because if the income generating is not as strong, the banks or investor can also look at the real estate. Because worst case, they may just pay the value of the land and the building itself, and then they can find different tenants and, converting into different things. So by looking at the survey is very important for you to understand, okay? So maybe that's our next class, all right? And of course, the last and the most important thing is, what is the commission payout? Right? Gotta ask that part. Ching, 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 ching. Okay, commission payouts. Now, because most of you are new in the commercial, don't expect to get paid 3%. Okay, it's not happening. Very rare. Unless you're working with developer and builder, they're very generous. So as you can see, residential is different. Some of you guys are here for my class last night. Lennar pays 1%. Residential builder, excuse my English, but they're cheap. Right? But versus commercial is different. Commercial, sometimes the builder developer will pay you 4%. And because developer and builder, they don't have agent representing them, if you bring in the buyer, they will pay your portion as a seller side also. So that's why usually they will pay 4% to 5%. Okay. So that's why when Andy did a closing on the office condo building, the developer paid 5%. Yeah, 5% on a $3 million deal. Shell office condo, the one that I took you guys to Richardson the other day, office condo building. Well, they pay 4 to 5% working with builder and developers. Okay. But even if you work with a listing broker on the commercial side, normally, again, they're generous. So normally the seller would pay 4%, and usually they would say, I'm just going to split half with you. So even 2% on a normal, shopping centers nowadays locally here, about 3 to 5 mil, right? So that's still good. I mean, I think it's good, 60 grand or so, right? So, but the thing is, again, you don't have to deal with the NAR settlements if you do commercials. That's why I'm so smart. I joined the commercial side. No, just kidding. But again, these are the factors. And then when it comes to leases, and I'm going to share with you on the leases, normally the listing side will offer you a 4% commission. They take 6, they charge the seller 6, but they only take 2. Okay. And then they pay out the buyer's agent, not the buyer's, the tenant rep 4%. Okay. So let's go to leases. Oops. Uh-oh. I missed one of my slide. Oh, maybe it's in here. Hold on, guys. Technical issues. Oh, yeah, I put it at the end. Sorry. Jump ahead of the game. Okay. So you good now? You know what to ask for sellers, buyers, commercial sale, right? Okay. If you don't, contact me. I'll walk you through. I'll partner up with you. Just kidding. What is a retail store? Okay, so first section, we discuss about properties, retail properties with real estate involved. Now it comes to tenant rep, landlord rep, okay? Some people may not like doing a lot of leases, but one of our agents in the EXP, I believe last month, just got paid $800,000 for commission on an industrial lease. Isn't that crazy? So that may change your mindset. At first, I was like, I don't want to do leases, because my background is from title. I only handle with anything real estate involved. So I'm like, if I'm not an expert on leases, I'm not going to do leases. I only do leases for my clients just to help them out. But until I hear that paycheck, I was like, I'm going to start doing leases now, right? Who say no to an $800,000 check? Okay. All right. So now let's talk more about retail store. What's considered a retail store is a business that sells products or services to customers. Retail stores can be physical stores, online stores, or a combination of both. It's also called hybrid. Physical retail stores are the most common type of retail. They are businesses that have a physical location where customers can come in and purchase products. Online retail stores are businesses that sell products online without a physical location, like Amazon. Hybrid retail stores are businesses that have both a physical location and an online presence, which most shoppings do nowadays, right? They have stores you can walk in and purchase, and then you can also buy online, okay? So that's what considered as retail store. So what are some types of the retail stores? And I'm putting here tips for you guys when you are a tenant rep. When you represent your tenants and it comes to certain types of retail stores that they are looking for, you need to know some of the details of how it operates. You need to understand each type of retail of how they operate, what they're looking for, so you can find the right space for your clients. Okay, that's very important. So it's a lot of information to cover, and I gotta hurry up. Okay, first is apparel stores. Starting strong on our types of retail stores block is an apparel store. This store focuses on selling clothing and accessories. Clothing stores come in all shapes and sizes, from small boutiques and thrift shops to large department stores and warehouse stores. So here's the tips of opening an apparel store. Start by finding the right location. Your business location will be one of the most important factors in your success. So if you have a client looking for the retail stores, you need to find the best location for them, okay? Focus on customer service. This is how their business run. You need to learn how the businesses even operate. Excellent customer service will be key to keeping your customers come back. Train your employees on how to provide outstanding customer service. Build up an inventory of stylish clothing and accessories. To succeed in this business, you need to offer products that are stylish and in demand. Stay up to date on the latest fashion trends so you can stock your store accordingly. Okay? Furniture stores. Furniture stores are retail businesses that sell furniture and home furnishings. These stores can range from small local shops to large national chains. And they can sell all types of furniture from sofas and chairs to bedroom sets and dining room tables, okay? So what are some tips of opening a furniture store? Perform market search. This is your job. Perform market research. It's important to know who your target market is and what type of furniture they are looking for, okay? If you're in a high-end subdivision neighborhood area, then most likely, what kind of furniture style are they looking for? Modernized, right? Something like that, right? So it's very important. But if you're about to open a furniture store in a more, low to mid level, then you probably don't want the luxury furniture in there because then how are you going to sell it, right? So that's important. Put together a strong business plan. A well-crafted business plan will help you secure the funding you need to open your store. It will also give you a roadmap for success. Source and purchase brilliant inventory. In order to succeed in this business, you need to offer high-quality furniture at competitive prices, etc. Okay? Discount stores, again, some of the tips is select a catchy name because you may run into working with business owners. It could be your long-term clients, right? But now they want to, you know what, Cindy, I want to open up my first business. Okay, well, what do you have in mind? Because there's so many things out there that you can open. So they may tell you, oh, I want to open this store, I want to open that store. These are some of the resources and guidance that you can also help them, okay? So visit competitor discount stores, check it out the market, create store layout, stock up affordable products, select some catchy name. That's catchy name for your store, okay? Convenience store, you're gonna run into this a lot too for those that are working with gas station. Usually gas station comes with convenience store. Another short term, we always call it is a C store, okay? So if you have someone ask you, does this gas station has a C store? You'll be like, what's a C store? Just FYI, okay? So most of the time gas station may have the C store. And then also like the restaurants, the liquor store could also be connecting, with that gas station. So some of the tips is strategic location. Location is very important. And again, sometimes the building can consider as Class C, right? In general, but if it's at a good location, then the convenience store can also be a really good one next to the gas station. Another term that you may hear in gas station industry is hard corner. Okay? Hard corner. Usually you see gas station at hard corner. So they may say, Gabby, I'm looking to build or buy a gas station. Can you make sure that it is at the hard corner? Sometimes I don't even care where it is. It could be 5 hours from here, but hard corner. That's the terminology, okay? So our training in September, it could be what's on the calendar from last year, which is government agency, okay? When I work with governments, I'm working on that one, but we may have to change the topic for September class to gas station, okay? I used to close 5 to 10 gas stations every single month. So I know a little bit about it. Okay, so besides the strategic location, offer a wide range of products. I mean, when you walk into the convenience store, it's like a mini Walmart, right? Pretty much everything there. Extend the store hours. Okay, so these are some of the tips for convenience stores. Drug stores. Decide if you start a new one or buy an existing one. There are some of Walgreens, CVS that are closing down or closed down. It already has an existing building. The signage is still there. So for the pharmacists or drugstores, business owners, maybe they don't want to start up with something brand new name, right? Just go into the building that has existing names already and then maybe franchise or something of that nature. But that way they can get the business up probably quicker too, because it already has a name, right? Get the necessary licenses and permits and source products from reliable suppliers. Okay. That's a lot of different stores. Supermarkets. Determine your grocery store business cost. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a fan of supermarkets. I see some of my clients before. It takes a lot of hard work to operate markets, a lot of hard work. And sometimes, with the seasonal too, if your AC or your fridge, your cooler is not working and you have to close down, I mean, it's just so much food is going to be thrown away, right? And if you don't operate it right, the food department can come out and close you down, and that's just my perspective, but Okay, so determine your grocery store business costs. How much does it cost, the operation, the location, is there other market stores around it or not? Choose the business structure and get the necessary licensing and permits. Department stores, financing options. Keep in mind too, like these are the leases, right? This is when you tenant reps. Do you have to understand all this? Not really, but at least some, right? That's why I put it here. I may not be able to go through all the details today, but it's there for you to go back and review. Okay, so I'm just going to glance it through real quick. There's convenience services too, the beauty salons, dry cleaner, laundromat. Okay. With these types, I got to point this out because these gonna also have what? Equipments. Okay. Let's also have equipments. So when you representing your tenants, it's always best to see, they call it a second gen. So second generation, which means before that is already has someone else that's already done that business before. So sometimes the space is already equipped, right? Maybe the business owners couldn't run it anymore. So they were just like, I just want to break the lease and then just leave. So with those type of spaces, and it fits with what your clients are looking for, it probably save them a lot of money as well, if the equipments are still in good, condition, right? But it's also something that you need to factor in. Laundromat, dry cleaner, beauty salons, because they need a specific, like shampoo hair or, things like that, right? So that's another additional cost when it comes to this type of stores or tenants. So creating the business plan with all the costs, and then they may need to hire professional, experienced staff to draw in customers, like a salesperson or something. Okay. Electronic stores like Best Buy, etc. Pretty much all that stuff. Car wash. Okay. Car wash is also considered retail. Decide on the type of car wash you want to start. There's different type of car wash: self-service, full service, express, etc. Conduct market research. Always do the research and then help them create a business plan. And then, of course, restaurants, you're going to run into this a lot too when it comes to tenants. Is it fine dining, casual dining, family style, fast casual, cafe, or bar seating, right? That's important because it's like a fast food style, more to go. They just need a smaller space. If it's a sit-in, or a bar or fine dining, when I say fine dining, you need to find them what? What type of building? Class A, right? So don't show them B or C. You see what I mean? So by understanding all these types, it's also help you find the space better for them. Okay, so now it comes to you representing the tenant. What are some of the items or keys that you need to ask? Okay. Of course, when you go to the leases, you search them like residential and MLS. Okay. There's different tools out there: CoStar, Craigslist, LoopNet. LoopNet is very basic, not details. So once you get into commercial, most of us are using CoStar, which is not cheap. Okay. But for example, let's say you try to find a space for your clients, right? And then you find the location, you see some criteria that may fit your client's needs. So what are you need to asking the landlord rep? The gross lease. Okay. What does gross lease mean? That's including the triple nets. So basically, if it's $10,000 a month, that's all your client's gonna pay. Flat. The landlord is gonna be responsible for the triple nets. Okay, so most landlords do not do gross lease because what are gross lease include? Triple nets. What are triple nets again? Right. Are those stay all the time the same? No, right? Are they going to go down or are they going to go up more likely? Up, okay. So the landlord do not like gross leases because they're responsible for the triple nets, right? So whenever those goes up, they're losing the rent. Okay, so you're gonna see a lot, we call it the triple net lease. Okay, don't get confused. The triple net lease is not including the triple nets. So that means they have a base rent, let's just say $38 per square foot, plus the triple net, whatever that could be. So usually they put on the listing as base rent $38 plus triple nets. Your job is to find out how much is a triple net. Okay, it could be an additional $10 or $15 more add on top of the base rent. Okay, so that's what things that you need to ask. The floor plan of the space, whether it's existing or a brand new subdivision, a building, right? Because you're looking at that one space. You want to see the floor plan of that one space. Unless it's new, then it's just a shell space. Shell space means there's nothing inside except concrete and roof and walls, okay? That's shell space. So most of the time when you go into a Class A building, usually they are still new, okay? Or sometimes we call it pad sites. Basically, they have land already and it's not built yet, but it's gonna be built and be ready the end of the year or next year, but it's available to pre-lease, okay? That's the pad sites. So with those coming in hand, you gotta look at the floor plan. Was it an existing that has a floor plan? Does this floor plan fits for my client, or is it just a shell space? Okay, lease terms, that's important. Again, everything is negotiable, okay? Don't ask the landlord, what is your lease term? Because then how are they gonna respond? Send me your LI. LI is what? Letter of intent, okay? Commercial is always start with the LI because they don't want to waste time putting the contracts and go back and forth like residential. So it's always start with the LI, whether it's a lease or a purchase or sell, okay? So the lease terms, what are some of the terms that you got to look on the lease terms? Is it gross or triple net lease? The commencement date, we know what commencement date is, right? The starting date. That's when your client start the business. As a tenant rep, you should also ask the landlord, let's just say even though the commencement day is August 1st, is it okay if we start moving in a week earlier? So they can move in a week earlier, but they're not start paying the rents. The commencement date is until August 1st, okay? Termination date, when is a termination date? Is there option to renew? Okay, so again, usually 3 to 5 years and then option to renew. You always want to make sure that your tenant has that option to renew. Because what happens if you don't? Your client is going to have to move out at the end of that lease, right? But if they have that option to renew, they can decide closer to the end of the term whether they want to continue and renew that lease or not. And most of the times on the option of renew, the amount of leases will increase, okay? It's not gonna be the same anymore. TI or TIA, tenant improvement allowance. Especially when you come into a shell building, then you ask them, is there a TI? Right? So tenant improvement could be payout or compensated for your tenant in two ways. Either they give you a certain amount per square foot to finish out or upgrade or improve the space, or they can give you in lieu of free rents. Okay, it's negotiable. For me, I like instant noodle, so everything is just up front. Okay, so I usually, if I'm gonna go in and lease any kind of space, I was like, okay, Daniel, what is the TI that you're gonna give me up front? You know, things like that, right? So I can pocket the money. Daniel says 0. Okay, a year free rent. A year free rent. He is not. Okay, demographics is very important, right? What is the population? What is the traffic? Because if you go into a city or, you know, an area and open up a business and there's no traffic, right? That's a problem. I don't know about you, but I think that's a big problem. Okay, and then last but not least is what? Commission payouts. Like I mentioned, don't be surprised if the landlord rep will be like 4%. That's actually the norm. So how do you get paid 4% on? On a residential or a sale, you get paid on the sales price, right? But for the lease, you get paid based on the whole term of the lease base rent, unless it's gross, okay? But let's say base rent is $40, okay? You take that, multiply by the square footage of the space, okay? And then the term. Is it a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20? So the longer the lease, the more commission you're getting paid. So even for a smaller lease ranges about 500,000-600,000, and you're getting paid 4% out of that. Okay, Daniel taught me that because at first I was like, I'm not doing leases. Right. Okay, I'll send it over to you, girl. But you see, that's how they calculate it. It's the whole term. But remember, even if there's an option to renew, you're not getting paid on that option to renew. It's only on the initial lease. Okay? Okay, so quick sample of leases before I brought on our guest speaker. So this is the sample of the commercial lease agreement. Okay, I'm going to go through real quick so you can see. On the right side, that's the base rent. Okay, that's the term. There's the renewal, the location, the size of the floor plan, which is on D right here. That's how big is it is. Okay, that's important because you're paying per square foot. Okay, so that's important. And then let's move on to this. Okay, so then initial base rent right there. This is not a gross lease. I can tell because it only has base rent. So the tenant is going to be responsible for the triple nets. Okay. What else here? Rules. And guys, usually the leases are like 30 pages long. If you're not sure, contact Charlie. He's the attorney. He can help you review all this and take care of your clients. Yeah. Okay, and then the offer date, and then the commencement date. So this is just a sample of the lease, what's gonna look like, okay? So here is the amendment. This is the extension, okay? So now it is extended to December 2028. And as you can see, base rent is increasing. You see the first 3 months, and then the next quarter, and then the next quarter. This is normal. Yep. So that's the perk for the landlord to also have the option to renew. Because when the current tenants stay and renew their lease, that's what happened. You get to increase them. Okay. But yes. That's a good question. But sometimes it depends on remember the exit strategy too. How long is he planning to hold on to this building? Most of the time, I don't see why the landlord is not willing to do the option to renew, because as an investor, even if he already has an exit strategy, when the tenant is secure for the option to renew and stay there, tends to stay there longer, even if when he sell it out, that's better for him. That's beneficial. So most of the time when you ask for the option to renew, the landlord will not say no. But on the option to renew, they will have something break down like this. It's going to increase by a certain percentage every single month, every single quarter, every single year. Okay. Same thing as the initial lease, right? Some of you guys may see when you sign up for a 5-year lease, the initial lease is this much, and then every year after that, it started to increase. You know, like Daniel's not going to give you, TI upfront, but he could say, well, I can start with a lower rent. So the business owner can start up, right? In the first 1 or 2 years, normally that's how long it takes for a new business owner to kind of get the business up and going. So the tenant can say, well, in lieu of this, let's just work it out, a plan. I can start with a low rent for you for the first year and then start to increase it. At the end, the landlord still get what they want. But they can do almost like in residential, we know the balloon loan type, right? They paid it out smaller, but they have to pay the remaining balance at the end of the balloon term. Okay, so the term could be amortized on 30 years, but then they have to pay it off at the end of 5 years. That's the residential balloon type loan, right? Same thing as lease. So the landlord can work something out like that too. They can start really low and then they kind of increase it. Or sometimes they can be like, well, the lease is $10,000. Can you just help me out 5,000 for the first 3 months? And then the other 15,000, they can put it at the end of the lease. Everything is negotiable. Commercial is no different, right? So, all right. So that's a sample. So, of course, now that you are realtors, I mean, not now you're realtors, you've been realtors and now you learn about the commercial. On the sell and buy process on the commercial properties, what do you need to be prepare your clients to? Same thing with residential, pre-approval, or at least get an LI from the commercial bank, right? So I'm not that expert, so I'm gonna have to introduce my partner expert, Mr. Davis Wong with First United Bank, and he's gonna share about the commercial loans. Oh, what is he using? This? You gonna sing a song for us, Davis?
Good morning, everyone. You hear me? Okay, good. Okay. So a short while ago, we were talking about like tenant improvement. I think, if you cannot go into the deepest pocket of David, and then you need to come to me. But go to him first. He's got the deepest pocket than I do. Then okay, but first things first. Normally, I would say if it was startup business, it might be a little bit tough for T&I. Sometimes we call it finish out. Okay, either terms that is easier. If it is like an expansion, it will be easier to get funding from the lender like us. Okay, it will be a little bit easier. So okay. What do I do? Our bank, I just give you a snapshot of our bank. It's a very good size of community bank, like 16 billion right now, jump up to 6.5 billion in asset. We are conventional, we do conventional loan and also SBA loans, deposit account, money market account, and ICS, we call it insure, cash sweep up to, normally people scare about, FDIC, but we can guarantee up to like 20, 30, 40 millions with cash sweep like ICS. So it's very great products. Okay, if someone care about the FDIC treasury management, we have a very great system on that as well. So we basically doing few things and like C&I, commercial and industry, working equipment, capital, lines of credit, acquisition, SBA, M&A. M&A means, merchant acquisitions, which means, you have your own business, you're trying to buy another business, we call it M&A, okay? Normally, we use the short form. So owner-occupied and investment real estate, such as, a retail center, at least 80% or 90%, they are like investment real estate, and it can be warehouse, strip center, and so those things. And consumer lending, we do all these kinds of loans. Okay, even those I may not be very proficient in doing those consumer because I belongs to commercial loans lending sections. So a couple of example, we we bank a company, asphalt company like 1 million. We place them with Frost Bank with lines of credit and AR. AR means who knows about AR? What's the short form? Accounts receivable. Okay, so that can be part of the collateral. Okay, and another HVAC company means like air conditioning company. So 2.5, and then we borrow against sometimes using the building. It is a few business, they're doing very well, if you know. Okay, like HVAC, plumbing, they're doing very good, and they are part of the acquiring group by a lot of people. So, I mean, some other deals, so I don't want to go into detail. So, leasehold improvement, okay, those are the things that Cindy was talking about, and it can be very huge. So, what does that mean? It just helps your customer to get the property. Sometimes it's cheaper financing from the lender, or it's easier from Daniel. So, I mean, one way or the other, you have to see the temperature of your clients, okay? And but anyway, T&I or tenants improvement is not cheap. So as far as I know, it's very expensive nowadays. So this is some of the projects that we be doing, like we call it OOCRE, means owner occupied commercial real estate. So we do a lot of different things. Okay, because you guys are a realtor broker, you touch a lot of people's life. Therefore, I mean, it will be very easy for you to jump into a business like that. You don't need to be an expert, just like myself. Okay, I'm not expert for everything. Okay, for example, am I very extremely good in underwriting? So I may not, but I have a good team. My team is just sitting right next to me. So we, I mean, with the center in Plano, it's a powerhouse. Okay, we have the underwriter and to approve deals very quick, very easy. Okay. So like church building, event center, industrial building, any property owner occupy more than 50% on, strictly speaking, 51%. So we can explore a little bit more if you want. So investment property. So normally if we are trying to buy commercial buildings, investment, normally we need 30% down. Okay. And special building, 65%. Okay, what is a special building? Such as like restaurant, because it's very hard to change. Or you have to spend a little bit more money to change. Like office or warehouse, and those are very simple. So therefore, it doesn't need a whole lot of things to change. And normally they're very simple. Okay. So underwriter, it's underwriting guidelines, SBA or conventional loan, they're very simple to each other. So loan requirements. So normally we will need commercial loans, personal guarantee and deposit accounts. And also, I mean, loan requirements depends on the purpose and collateral. And sometimes you may hear that, I mean, oh, okay, we may need a insurance policy. That's very normal, okay? Especially a huge business. Okay, well, when we're talking about, let's say, we just done a deal on the event center. The loan is around 4 million. So normally would put a insurance policy against him because things happen. So therefore, we will get paid, and then everything will be settling down. So commercial loan, we do HELOC, home equity lines of credit, but we need to be first lien positions. Okay, I need to stop here. Do you all have any questions? Please. Yes, life insurance policy, and we're gonna be the bank will be the beneficiaries. Okay, it's term, yeah, because we just want to get paid. Okay, so in other words, if the loan amount is let's say 4 million, okay, we will need 4 million. Okay, the loan amount is 1 million, we will need 1 million. And this will especially always happening to SBA loans. It's very common. Any other questions?
In case something happens to the borrower, then they have that secure. So usually on a term, let's just say if it is on a 5-year term, then they just need like 5-year term or a little bit longer, but just enough to cover the loan collateral in case something happens to the borrower. So this is something completely different from residential. Okay.
So something we need to structure. It can be sometimes it can be very complicated. But anyway, so questions, please, because it can be very dry. Okay, now we're talking about how to structure the deal. Okay, so normally anyone, I'll give you the answer already. You have to listen very carefully. Anyone who has less than 20%, we don't pull them into as a guarantor. 20% or less. And otherwise, anyone who has 20% or more, he or she have to be the guarantor. But don't give me 5. They are all foreigner, okay? It doesn't fly. You get the answer, right?
Yeah, with us after the class.
Yeah, it just calculation. Any other questions? So if you don't have questions, I'm gonna have questions to you because I do a lot of teaching. Okay, so cap ratio. Anyone knows about cap ratio? Because I'm talking about right now retail. Cap ratio is very important, right? Especially when you are trying to buy. Okay, what is the definitions of a cap ratio? You have to know very well because you interact with clients and that's all they care. Okay, if you're trying to buy commercial real estate investment, the first things most likely they will ask, what is the cap ratio?
I shared this earlier to see if you guys are listening.
Oh.
What is the cap rate?
Okay, so is it the lower the better, the higher the better? Higher. Why? So in other words, you have to be, very smart when because investor, they loved the broker or realtor, they really know what they are talking about. Otherwise, they don't really trust you. But having said that, you don't have to be an expert. You said that, wait a minute, okay, I'll pull my lender into it so that, he or she will be, not he or she, Davis will be able to help you, okay? Because, in reality, they understand, okay, you're not an expert for everything, but you have to be a very good resources for people. Make sense? Any other questions? Or do you want me to ask you questions? I do. I love to ask people's questions. Okay. That's what I captured. Cindy mentioned about 10 different kind of a property. Anyone remember 5 at least? You just raise your hand, okay? I don't want to embarrass you. Okay, great. They got 0. All right. I'm sure you guys get it. You're smart, literally. Okay, so why land with us? Okay, service. Okay, our center or the Plano Market Center is at Tollway and Parker. If you know where is the Cinemark, we just right next to it. There's a new building. Okay, we have 2 actually. One is almost complete. Ours already complete around over a year ago. Okay, so normally within 5 millions, okay, we will make decision in-house at Plano. Okay, what about more than 5 millions? Okay, then we will need to go to the committee. They meet on a weekly basis. Okay, that might be a little bit hairy, but the thing is, we know how to deal with it. So normally, okay, now I am trying to ask you questions. Okay, what is the turnaround time of our bank to say that the deal will have a deal or the deal will not have a deal? You guess, okay? Hey, not bad. 1 week, around 1 week time. Okay, but you have to present all of the informations to me. Means like tax return, your debt schedules, and your PFS. Anyone who knows what is PFS? Yes. Now, see, it's very important. You can, impress your clients. Okay, you need this and that. Is that what? PFS? What is that? Okay, then, all right, got it. Personal financial statement. Okay, so anyone with accounting on the left-hand side, when I face the personal financial statement, on the left side is your asset. The right side is your liability, which means talking narrow down to when we do the subtraction or additions, okay, the more net worth is better. Normally, what's the asset? Okay, cash, number one, right? On the top left-hand corner. And then your value of the real estate, commercial real estate, and those things, okay? Your accounts receivable, okay? On the right-hand side is normally is your debt, okay? Like your house payment, your commercial real estate debt, and those things, okay? Your car loan, credit card is on your right-hand side. So, the more the net worth is better, okay? And I can tell you, do you know why? Why is more net worth is better than less? Net worth. You have more asset. So having said that, when we look at the more asset is, okay, we're looking at more liquidity. Okay, what is liquidity? Cash. Okay, I have $10 cash, but Dougie have like 1 million. Okay, who would you lend to? Him, not me, $10, okay? If I can't afford to make the payments, you know that, I will run. He will not. He got money. I don't know if he's got 1 million, but I presume. Yes, yes, everyone have to, fill out their personal financial statement. For anyone who has ownership more than 20 or 20% more, they have to present us the personal financial statement. Personal guarantor, which means we need your autograph. Okay, you need to sign on that. You're not gonna run. We're gonna find you. All right, so closing, we can do very quick closings since I'm in underwriting. It's in-house, very competitive and honest for us. We normally give you the term sheet first, which means, okay, this is the long terms and rate and collateral and those things, okay? Right, treasury management, I don't give a lot of paint over there. So it's sort of a commercial vehicle, which means, anyone, they have complex deposit services, we will use this kind of a platform. Otherwise, normally we're just doing something like, okay, mobile check deposits and those things. Normally, those are details. So, but one thing you have to look at that is the fraud protections, okay? Fraud, there's a lot. So therefore, we normally will emphasize on things like that. Positive pay. What is positive pay? Anyone knows? Just trying to, give you more knowledge. Positive pay. Anyone knows? Oh, Charlie's. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. For example, you write 100 checks, but all of a sudden, okay, 110 checks is coming out. Who is that? Okay, you will select not to pay on the specific check is coming in. So in other words, you will have control. And otherwise, you can earn a lot of money. I'm talking about maybe you or your customer, but the money just going through the back door. So it can be very horrible. Okay, so and so we have a true relationship manager, private banking clients, and we have I mean, all kind of services. Insurance, well, right here we're talking about is commercial insurance, not normal insurance that we're talking about. We're not very proficient in normal insurance, but commercial insurance, wealth management, and SBA loan, mortgages. Mortgages means I'm in the residential mortgage. We own part of the residential mortgage there on our second floor and the third floor. So that's my boss, Justin, and that's myself. That's my QR code. It does work, and if it doesn't, I still have my business cards out there. Feel free to take the QR code. Okay, any other questions for me? Okay, if not, I'll start from here. So that I mean, is it Daniel is going to be the next? Oh, okay, big pocket. I just make it up, okay?
I'll save Daniel for last. The big pocket last. Okay, we're gonna go through the contract real quick for the commercial contract. What are some things that you need to know? And then before we have other guest speakers and then grab lunch, okay? Anyone has filled out this contract before? Used them before? No? Okay. All right, so it's going to be a lot of information. So one thing about commercial contracts, okay? When it comes to commercial transactions, most of the time, the attorneys are preparing the contract, okay? So when you work, again, who are your clients? Investors, business owners, right? Their experience. Most of the time, and I would say this, most of the time, they already have their own attorney, okay? So working in the commercial is somewhat easier because they have the attorney represent them. They have the attorney represent the seller, the buyer, and so it will help you a lot as an agent. You just need to work closely with that attorney. So with that being said, is the attorney is going to be preparing the contract, right? And then both attorneys going to be working together, look at the contracts. But in case your clients don't have a contract, then this is one of the contract forms that you can use, okay? And is on Texas Realtors. So again, I'm just gonna go through real quick. All the information here is very easy, similar to the residential contracts, okay? Part 1, part 2, part 3, they're the same. And then right here is, again, third-party financing, assumption. And then if there's seller financing, contracts here, title policy. So this is something different from the residential contract. If you can see this contract, it says automatically the owner's title policy is paying by the seller. Okay, so if you represent the seller, make sure you see this part. And if your seller is not agreed to this kind of cost, then you gotta cross it out and make the change. Otherwise, it's automatic. I've seen this a lot at closing when listing agents are not looking at this portion. And then at the time of closing, the seller got mad because the seller's like, why am I paying for it? I already told you so. And then the broker is like, well, I make a mistake, so let me just reimburse you back for my commission. You don't want to do that, okay? So if you use this kind of form, make sure this is, cross out. Yeah, you can. Yeah, just draw a line and then type in buyer, okay? If you use this form. And then again, all these are very standards. The only thing that I want you to see is section C over there is UCC search. When it comes to commercial, it's always highly recommend for the UCC search. Most title companies, I know Charlie does this too, is whenever he receives the commercial contracts, he will run the UCC search. So what is the UCC search? Do we know? For you guys that went through my classes before, you know this answer. So for real estate part, the title company run the researches to see if there's any liens filed against the real estate, right? UCC search is similar, but it's running on the business names. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you representing the buyer and you're going to purchase a retail shopping center that has 10 tenants in there. Okay, if I were you, I will make sure, and usually the bank will require this too. They will be like, I need the UCC search for all the tenants, okay, to make sure that they don't have anything filed against their business names. Because let's say a nail salon is in the shopping center, right? They're going to be needing equipments. They're going to need supplies, right? Or sometimes the tenants may have an AC guy come out and fix their AC and not paying for that, right? So then those people can file the UCC lien on the business name, not the real estate part. Make sense? So it's very important. And then also, sometimes the bank will also ask, I need the UCC search on all the sellers' names as well. Because the seller's name in commercial, most of the time, they have two different entities, one for the real estate and one for the business. Okay, so if the landlord slash seller is only the owner of the real estate and has no business in that shopping center, okay, then we're just gonna run whatever's vested. But sometimes, remember, Davis mentioned about the SBA loan, right? If they also occupy part of the building to run their own business, then you also need to make sure any names associated with that transaction, whether seller or tenants, need to run the UCC search because it's very important.
Not only of the owner, they can search for the tenants.
Yes, the business names. Business names. UCCs are filed against business names. The only thing that I see that was filed in the residential is like solar system. Okay, something like that, right? But names need to be searched to make sure, especially after the pandemic. What was that government program again, Davis? PPP, and then there's other, SBA programs that were helping business owners. Those are going to be pulled up by the UCC because sometimes they're grants, sometimes they're, what do you call it? Assistance from the government to help the business owners survive during the pandemic. So sometimes they are payback also. So when those pops up, we got to make sure to see what it is. And, sometimes the bank would like, I need those to be gone or terminated. Then you have to collect it from the owners and pay it off at closing. Okay. So those are the UCC search. Again, the rest is like objection, very similar. Right here. Okay, so commercial. When it comes to residential contract, the option period, right? The effective date is when? Is when the last party signed. Commercial transactions, the effective date is when the title company received the contract. Okay. The option period on residential, it is now called inspection period or due diligence period on the commercial side. So don't ask people what is the option period, okay? Okay, because they don't use option period in commercial. Most of the time it's due diligence or inspection period, okay? That's why you see also called feasibility. Okay, on this particular contract is feasibility. Other forms of contract they may call inspection. Overall, a lot of people are going to be using what word? Due diligence. Due diligence means all the due diligence peers on the contract, also with the financing due diligence, okay? Basic information. And again, on the section D, because this is retail, you're gonna have most of the boxes there checked. Rent roll, all the expenses, all that stuff, okay? I'm gonna go through quick because I know Charlie's gonna mention some of the other items too. Okay, one thing is very important, your commission. People make mistake a lot on this one. Look right here, okay? If you choose box 2, it says principal broker getting paid, let's say 4%, okay? If you put here 2 and 2, right? 2 and 2. Pay attention, 2 and 2, okay? Do not fill anything out on that portion. Agreement between brokers. If you put another 2% there, you're getting paid 0. Because the other page, so either or. If you put the other page that you and the buyer's brokers already got the split, don't put it again because now it's saying the principal broker agrees to pay the cooperating broker this amount of commission. The other page say the seller is paying this commission, either 4% to you on the other, and then 2 over here, or 2 and 2 on the other one. Please, you don't want to work for free. I've seen this a lot, okay? So either or. Let's go back real quick. I'm like running a marathon right now. Okay, so fill out information there. The commission is important. The thing with the commercial contract, they give you options, either the exact date or certain days after the feasibility period, which does not have on the residential contract, right? On the residential contract, it say on or before this date. Okay, but here it could say 30 days, 60 days after the feasibility period. Okay. Again, I always mention, do not put anything in special provision. That is for the attorney. If the seller or buyer is intending to use 1031 exchange, make sure that portion is checked. Okay. Do we know what 1031 exchange is? Okay, good. Good. Okay, and then let's move on. Consent, addendums. Over there, section E, buyer may or may not assign this contract. Okay, I gotta mention this, I forgot. On page 1 of the contract where it has the buyer's name, okay, you're working with commercial. You're working with investors and business owners. So every property, almost 99.9% of the time, every single transaction, every purchase, the buyer will form a new entity. Okay, so they may not form that entity until during the due diligence period. So as a buyer's name, when you put on a contract, you need to put like Cindy Vo and or assign. Okay. And or the section, you need to put in buyer may assign this contract. Not necessarily mean I'm going to assign it to Shannon, but I'm going to assign it to my new company's name. But at least you're disclosing to the seller that Cindy Vo is not going to be the name purchasing the property at closing. Okay, make sense? Okay. All right. So then let's go on. That's pretty much it. Well, for me. Okay, so I cannot wait. I'm super excited ever since I retired from title. I know I look super young, but I retired from almost 20 years of title. My new partner is Mr. Charlie Kim. He is a real estate attorney. He has been there to help me and my clients all the way. So I want him to come up and share from an attorney perspective. So after the class, you know where to go on any legal needs. Don't call me. No, just kidding. Contact Charlie. So Charlie, share a little bit about what you guys do, and in particular in the commercial transaction.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. A lot of great information, and as always, and really great to see everybody here again. A lot of nice faces, and so and I mean it too. And I help a lot of realtors all the time with their legal issues or any title questions that they may have, and I'm happy to do it at any time. So, my kids are now grown and almost out of the house, and my wife doesn't need me, so. So I have a lot of free time unless I'm golfing. So, but yeah. So what I'd like to talk to you guys about today really is just sort of preparing for a commercial closing from a title company's perspective. What does a title company need to have to properly close? Okay. So as you know, a lot of times in these commercial transactions, especially in the bigger commercial transactions, you've got the sellers and the buyers that are, companies. They're either LLCs, or they're going to be a series LLC, or they're going to be, corporations, or they're going to be out-of-state corporations. So sometimes these corporate structures can be very, very complicated. So we want to make sure well before the closing that we have all of the appropriate company documents to the title company. The reason why that's important is because the title company is going to insure that transaction. So we need to know who the correct signers are for that company, for that seller, for that buyer. So I'll give you an example. I've got one that we're supposed to close tomorrow. Okay, we just got the buyer's corporate documents in today, and then so I automatically when I looked it up in the Texas Secretary of State, they had 2 individuals as the managing members for that company. Okay. When that buyer sent me their corporate documents, it showed that managing member was actually an out-of-state LLC. Okay, so we don't know who to put down, who the correct party is for the that will be signing on behalf of the buyer. So we're working those issues out now. That's a day before closing. It's a small deal, so it's not that big of a deal. But imagine if, you know, you were closing a $10 million transaction and we don't know who to put down as the correct signer for the buyer or for the seller. It could be disastrous. It could take time to correct it, you know, so those are kind of things that we really, really need to know. We need to see those, I would say, well in advance of the closing. So that's just kind of one thing to keep in mind as you guys are working on these bigger commercial deals, okay? All right. As you know, a lot of times in these commercial transactions, there's going to be tenants. Cindy did a great job of explaining, you know, a lot of the issues related to tenant transactions. You know, so I'm going to kind of go over some of the important things that we want to see, okay, on the closing statements when we're closing transactions with these tenants in them, okay? So you always want to make sure that the security deposit, okay, under the lease gets transferred to the buyer, okay? Because that new owner is going to have to, at some point, pay back that security deposit. And so it's not going to be fair, as you know, if that security deposit is maintained, never gets transferred to the buyer at the closing. I love the net car contracts, the TAR commercial contracts, because number one, they're very fair, okay, fair to both sides. And then number two, okay, they're really, really detailed. So they talk about all these issues, like transferring the security deposit, you know, secondly, prorating the rent for that month, okay? One thing that they're not really that good of that you guys really, really need to pay attention to, okay, is gonna be if it's a new tenant, okay, so let's say the new tenant signs on February 2nd of that, whatever current year that is, all right? The sale for that commercial property is supposed to occur in July of that same year, okay? There's a lot of issues and a lot of money that seller may owe to that tenant. And if that's not accounted for and not transferred at the time of the closing, it's going to leave that buyer in a huge bind. One of those issues is TI money, okay? So if that seller has promised that tenant, you know, $150,000 of TI money, and that money doesn't get transferred at the closing, guess what's going to happen when that TI money comes due at the end of the year? That buyer is going to have to reimburse, okay, that tenant for that TI money if they didn't, you know, out of their own pocket, okay, because they're the new legal landlord, okay. In any assignment of lease, it's going to show that buyer as being obligated to fulfill all of the obligations of that seller as the previous landlord, and one of those legal obligations is going to be the TI money, okay? Second is going to be any broker fees, okay? If you've got a new tenant and the sale happens relatively quickly, the new buyer may have to reimburse those brokers as that money becomes due, okay? So you want to make sure that those things get transferred at the closing too, all right? Triple net calculations. You know, you always want to make sure that you understand for the buyer what the triple net calculations are and that they make sense. You know, Cindy already talked about the triple net, so I don't have to really go into it a whole lot. But that is all under the lease too. Anna and I were talking, and we were kind of talking about, well, at what level does an attorney need to be involved in a commercial transaction? Okay, we kind of just guesstimated about $1 million. Okay, but there are a lot of issues that could arise, legal issues that could arise, you know, that are super, super important once you get above that $1 million. You're dealing with more tenants, for example. You're dealing with very complicated commercial leases that need to be understood and explained, you know, and so all these things. And, you know, as you may know, you know, some of these commercial leases are, you know, 40, 50, 60 pages long, okay? Like Daniel's, you know, because he protects himself with everything. But it's true. It's really super important to make sure that you have the right attorney on board at the right time. But Anna and I think $1 million is pretty reasonable, okay? All right. Let me talk about one thing too that we touched on briefly, or Cindy touched on briefly. It's that letter of intent. Okay, and that letter of intent, okay, can be used for the commercial purchase. Okay, and it can be used for the commercial tenancy too, for that commercial lease, okay? Even though it's non-binding, okay, it is a general understanding between the parties of what the major terms are gonna be. Okay, it's super, super hard from an attorney's perspective, after that letter of intent is issued and signed, okay, to come back when we're drafting that commercial contract or drafting that commercial lease, okay, to make changes. Okay, because the seller, in their mind, they have this everybody has an understanding of the way things should go. Okay, whenever you get a contrary idea or opinion against your understanding, even though it's non-binding, it's upsetting. Right? So if you go into the transaction, you know, a commercial lease, and you know you've agreed in the letter of intent that it's going to be a triple net lease, okay, and then your tenant or your client, the tenant, you know, a couple of weeks later changes their mind and they say, hey, I really don't want this triple net lease. I want to do it as a gross lease. Well, now you've got to go back to that seller and say, hey, my client changed their mind. They don't want to do this as a triple net lease. They want to do it as a gross lease. Now you're not that seller may agree to it, okay, but it's going to be really tough to get them to agree. And number two, you're going to need some other things down the line as you're negotiating the lease or the purchase contract, and that seller's already going to be on edge, and they're going to be a lot less willing to help you make the changes that you need in you know, for your client at a later time. So what I told Cindy and I, she's got a fantastic client, really wealthy guy, super, super busy, multi-millionaire, you know, and brilliant guy, okay? But he was like that. He had the letter of intent signed, had some things that he wanted to change after that letter of intent was signed, and you know, it just didn't go over well. So what I told him is, and this is so true, in any letter of intent, okay, that you guys go over, and I can help you with that too. You've got to fight like heck, okay, to get the best terms for your client in that letter of intent. Because even though it's not binding, okay, that other party has to have a really, really good reason to change one of those terms. Okay, super, super important to understand that. Okay, so you know that client that Cindy and I have, you know, just really just brilliant, but just kind of all over the place, right? So he's like a week or two after the letter of intent signed, he's like, hey, you know, let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's going to happen, but let me ask anyway. And I asked, and of course they said no way. So please remember, in those letter of intents, those aren't just form documents that you're going to fill out, but they're super important because they lay the foundation and the direction for how that commercial deal is going to go, whether it's a purchase contract or if it's a lease. Okay, super, super important. Okay, so what are the important documents that are related to tenants, okay, in these commercial transactions? Okay, one obviously is the lease. Okay, Cindy did a great job going over the lease. The two things that I look for in any commercial lease that are super, super important are, number one, who pays for repairs? Okay, and then number two is who pays, are there triple net expenses? And is it fair? Are those triple net expenses auditable? And are they fair to the tenant? Okay, you need to have a lease, okay, that is crystal clear on who makes the repairs. Okay, generally 9 times out of 10, if you're using a commercial, standard promulgated commercial lease form, the landlord is going to pay for basically the shell. Okay, that means the roof, the exterior walls, and any foundation issues that arise during the tenancy. Okay, the tenant pays for everything else. Okay, including what's most important, HVAC, HVAC repairs as well. Okay, I've seen a number of different variations in it, you know, along the lines, but that's the general rule. Okay, obviously, if you're the tenant, you want to make sure that those, you know, you can negotiate for those terms, okay? But a lot of times, remember, those terms are going to be contained in that LOI. Who pays for what? Okay, so if you agree to an LOI that says the tenant pays for all the HVAC repairs, then it's hard to make those changes down the line when you actually look at the lease, okay? Triple net expenses, the insurance costs, the property taxes, the common area expenses, all super, super important. I did a deal recently where there were a number of gross leases in the package of the tenants that buyer was buying, okay? But when we did the calculation, okay, those gross leases still were enough to cover all of the triple net expenses. Okay, so it worked, it made sense. So we didn't have to terminate that contract, that commercial contract, okay, because it made sense. All right. Assignment of lease. This is super, super important in a commercial closing, that you have the right assignment of lease, okay, for the buyer and the seller, okay? And, if you've got a good attorney representing that buyer, they're going to create those assignment of leases, okay, to make sure that any amounts that aren't paid, that are due and owing before the closing date, okay, are still the responsibility of the seller and not the buyer after the closing. Okay, so those things are super important. So all these documents that I'm really talking about are critically important to the transaction, okay? But a lot of times, most of these commercial brokers, commercial people kind of just go with the standard flow of the documents that are produced. A lot of times, people will ask the title companies to create these documents, and we do our best, but we're not a party to the transaction, so we're not going to favor that important document one way or the other. It's going to be a very, very neutral document. Okay. All right. Tenant estoppel certificates, another super, super important document in a commercial real estate transaction with tenants. Okay. So those tenant estoppel certificates are really guarantees by that tenant describing what the material terms of their own lease is. If they have a security deposit, how much that is, what the terms of the lease are, how much they're paying, if they're paying triple net, okay, and whether or not there have been any breaches by either party during the lease term, okay? So those are always, they're obligated, the landlord's obligated to produce those, or the seller's obligated to produce those in commercial contracts. Okay. And the reason why they're so important to the buyers is because the buyer is going to rely on not only their review of that commercial lease, but also what the tenant estoppel certificate says too. So you want to make sure that the terms of that tenant estoppel certificate match with what your review of the lease says as well. Okay. So I had another incident recently where we had a situation where the sellers didn't produce the tenant estoppel certificates. The buyers were okay with it, okay? And then now, this past week, the buyer called me and he said, hey, did we ever get these tenant estoppel certificates? And he was asking because the tenant was trying to change the terms of, of some issue related in their lease. Okay, I told him, no, you said you didn't want them. And so, you don't have that estoppel certificate. It's basically a promise by that tenant that what they're saying about the lease is true and correct. Okay, so that's why they're critically important. Can't make changes to it after the closing, because that's something that the buyer has relied on in that transaction. Okay. Next important document is called the subordination agreement. Okay, and your lender, okay, if you're the buyer and the buyer is going to want this, it's a subordination agreement that says tenant, any rights that the tenant has under the lease are going to be subordinated to Davis's mortgage lien or deed of trust in Texas. Okay, so even though that arose prior in time to the actual financing of the transaction, the rule is that any obligations under that lease will take priority over the mortgage or deed of trust unless there's a subordination agreement, okay? So that subordination agreement is going to be super important, especially for your lender, the buyer's lender, and it's important for you because you need to know what it is so you can talk about it with your client if they ask you, hey, what is this? Why do I need it? Those kinds of things, okay? Another thing that's super important are going to be easement restrictions, okay? Easements related to that commercial transaction. That's going to come out in the title work from the title company. But a lot of times, you know, the buyer's going to need it. They're going to need to know what it says. And hopefully the leases will cover any expenses that that arise through your discovery of those easements and restrictions. You know, I think I gave this example at the last class that I did with Cindy is, you know, I was representing a buyer up in Frisco. It was a four tenant commercial property, and the developer who originally developed that property, and that one single strip mall was shared by 4 or 5 different property owners, okay? But when the original developer developed that whole lot, okay, they put a restriction in the property records that said all of the 5 property owners will have to share in all of the expenses when it comes to repaving the parking lot or repairs to the parking lot, okay? Those restrictions and costs get passed down to each property owner every time that it gets sold, okay? So that's why it's really important to know that, because that's just an extra expense that's not going to be listed, that may not be easily disclosed in any contract. So it's important to look at those and understand what those are. And another reason why it's important is because you may be able to pass those expenses on to the tenant as a common area maintenance fee, okay? But if you don't know what it is, it's going to be hard to pass it on to the tenant because it may not be in the lease. But you need to understand those kinds of things, okay? So again, remember that $1 million threshold that that Anna and I kind of talked about, okay? In transactions that are less than that, those kinds of issues probably are not going to arise. But when you're talking about $4 or $5 million projects, okay, they're going to have these kinds of things that are going to be super, super important. Okay, all right. Let's talk about some of the closing documents now. We already know what I'm sorry, one more thing too, zoning confirmation letter. Okay, super, super important when you're dealing with a buyer who is thinking about changing the use of that commercial property, okay? So these zoning confirmation letters, thank you, Daniel. These zoning confirmation letters, okay, yeah, I like to see my name. That's awesome. I appreciate it. But these zoning confirmation letters, okay, you can get through any city, the planning department. They may have their own zoning department, but what they do is they'll give you a list. Okay, they'll number one, they'll give you written verification of the allowed uses, the development standards, and the regulations applicable to that commercial property. Okay, they're going to summarize the current uses allowed. They're going to list and also list the applicable land use history. Okay, so those are going to be super important, especially if your buyer's thinking about changing the use of that property from, you know, maybe agricultural to commercial or industrial. Okay, you need to know what those are. So in the due diligence of any commercial transaction, you know, that should be one of the documents that you get. Okay, all right. So finally, let's kind of talk about just the closing documents. You know, we talked about what the warranty deed is. You guys know what that is. You know, another important document is going to, and we talked about the UCC, you know, which Cindy did a great job of explaining. And then also, you know, the bill of sale. Okay. So a lot of times in these commercial transactions, the seller is going to sign a bill of sale in favor of the buyer. And that bill of sale, so the deed covers the real estate. The bill of sale is the transfer of ownership document for all of the personal property that seller owns, okay, to the buyer. Okay, you need to have that. You know, it could be, you know, I don't know, that seller may be selling, you know, a commercial property, it's got, you know, a lot of chairs, they've got a lot of, you know, in warehouses, a lot of racks that are, you know, that'll be used in warehouses and things like that. So if you don't have the bill of sale and somebody asks you about it later, then, you know, you need to have that document to show proof that you're the actual owner, okay? And just one thing about the UCC too, super, super important. You gotta have the title company always review that for your buyer, because, you know, it happens more often than not. It doesn't show up in the title commitment all the time. So you're gonna need that as a separate source of due diligence as well. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully that was somewhat informative for you guys. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And then, did anybody have any questions at all for me?
Then, but I don't have to speak over the way that the tenants have to get out of the way of the contract. Usually the landlord approves, like they are, obligated to pay the full term, you know?
Right.
But what is it usually, what do you recommend? I know that it's depend on the time, but what is the education that they can put in the contract, to break the contract?
So, yeah, there are clauses that the tenant can use. You know, obviously from a landlord's perspective, those are never favorable. You never want to see those. But if it's like a Starbucks, you know, and they're paying you a ton of money, plus you're getting the recognition for your strip center, okay, I could see a landlord maybe making a point to negotiate that issue there. But, you know, it's really, as Davis says, it's on a case-by-case situation, you know, so it really kind of depends on, you know, the factors of that specific situation. But yeah, you can draft those into leases, okay? But, you know, from a landlord's perspective, you know, that's never favored, never good. Yeah, but there are. Yes, Shane. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's what, so I think you can include that, okay, if it's specifically clear. Okay, so let's say you've got a tenant, okay, and they want to renew the lease. You know that charge is in the easement. Okay, you can include that charge, and you can share that charge with that tenant the next time you draft up the lease. I think it's so number one, I think the commercial leases that, you know, we're seeing, you know, through Netcar and the Texas Association of Realtors, very, very good leases, but sometimes they don't cover those really, really specific issues. You know, I think it should be a common area maintenance charge that is chargeable to the tenant, but I could see somehow where that tenant would argue against that. But yeah, you'd have to take a look at that easement too. And really the only way you're going to see those is through the title commitment. And if you actually look at all the restrictions in Schedule B, and then you'll have to take a look at those and see if there are any charges there. I actually ran across that a couple times, one in the Frisco development, and also for some other like churches. You know, churches had some issues like that too, where they share, because now you're seeing churches, they're actually going into these commercial warehouses, okay, and they're you know, they're not using a traditional church building anymore. They're buying these commercial buildings that are warehouses or offices and converting those into churches. And so that's just one thing that you need to be aware of. Okay, yeah, but good question. Yep. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it. Okay, bye.
So, you know, Charlie mentioned something about, you know, it depends on when you should bring in the attorney, okay? Highly recommend it, because most of you here are not experienced in commercial yet. I would start bringing in attorney like Charlie in the very beginning, okay? So as soon as you have the clients, you find the property, you need to bring in, you know, Charlie or any other attorneys that, you know, can help your clients and can also guide you and your clients from the very beginning, right? So I highly recommend Charlie because he has been a real estate attorney for so long. And also, he handling the closing side as well. So he can see both aspects because based on my commercial experience, sometimes when I work with the attorneys that are either out of state, because again, you're working with investors, right? Either they're out of states or they're not really real estate attorneys and have no experience in the closing side, you will be ending up arguing with them, okay? Because they may not know all the rules and laws and regulations for Texas. We love Texas, but Texas is one of those weird states, okay, when it comes to laws and regulations. So that's why I highly recommend him because he knows from, different sides of the commercial. So I want to bring up the last guest speaker, Deep Pocket Guy. Before I share with you the site tour, and then we can grab lunch and go on the site tour. Daniel Ng. Dun, 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 dun.
All right. Here's my QR code. You want to scan my information, text me. So I see some new faces here, which is great. My name is Daniel Ng. I'm a commercial practitioner, been in the business for 22 plus years. Right after high school, in 1998, went to get my real estate license. My family has been in the business already. So I knew that after college, I would be coming back to Dallas. I went to school for banking and finance, studying in Switzerland. And, coming back into the business, not doing the brokerage side yet, just more on the investments, raising capital, managing the properties. He mentioned about, or I think the vintage properties that we have, the B and C class type properties. So I'm going to call my properties vintage now. So I like that. I like that word. So, it's a retail. We specialize in it. We just like that product type. If people who, you probably know a lot of investors that enjoy multifamily because a lot of residential investors, their next step is getting to multifamily because they're familiar with it. For us as investors, we don't particularly like multifamily because they don't have a triple net. So right now, if you look at the market today, what the multifamily sector is suffering because of property insurance hikes and property tax. Well, with retail, we have triple that. Doesn't that get passed through the tenant? Right? So the landlord for us as investors, that gets passed through the tenant. The tenant pays the expenses and changes. Office is not always a triple net. So when a golf ball hit Charlie's office, the glass, that was an expense on the landlord, right? Not on Charlie. But if it was a retail, if something hit the glass in the front storefront, guess what? That's the tenant's responsibility. So just different things. And I'm not saying that multifamily isn't a good investment to invest in. That's just not our forte. I've learned a lot of different things in the retail. You're always learning. I guess that's why you guys are here. You're always learning. So I appreciate you guys taking the time coming here as well. And I really appreciate, Cindy creating these classes every month on the commercial that, teach you guys. And that's the value prop as a group that we have is just giving back because knowledge is yours, right? So for you guys to take the time away from your business is great. It's yours. So I'm glad that you are investing time. Cindy wanted me to talk more on retail, maybe some stories, and during lunch we can talk a little bit more. But the main thing is understanding the product types. Industrial, office, retail, mixed use, all these product types. You just got to specialize it. On the commercial side, you kind of specialize in certain things. So I have a multifamily guy that does just multifamily. Tonight, if you want to go to their investor multifamily meetup, they're going to be at the Sidecar Social in Frisco. Retail, we have different retail groups as well. CCIM is not just retail based. It's more, my CCIM designation is more on investments. So industrial, office, multifamily, that also is in that. If you're looking to do more in commercial, get your foundation. And CCIM is a great course where you're going to not only learn about the information is also the network, right? So real estate in commercial is really your network, the people because off-market deals. And if there's anything you want me to point out? So,
I want to add on that most of you guys are new in commercial. Highly recommend to go to the MetroTex, I'm sorry, MetroTex Realtors that has the certification for commercial. Okay, it's best for you to start with that
correct.
certification so that you understand the basics of commercial. Continue to go into different types of commercial classes and trainings like what we usually have every single month, exploring it, learn about it, and then minimize it to one or two that you're going to be specialized and be an expert in. Because when you work with commercials, clients, usually they're saying, what is your specialty? You can't just say, well, I do everything, right? That's not like similar to the residential side. They would like to, if there are retail investors, if they are hotel investors, they like to work with commercial agents that are specialized in that field. Okay, so that's different of the aspects when you work with investors and clients. Okay,
So one takeaway is if you do have a commercial client, work with a commercial practitioner that focuses on that niche, on that specific market. If you come to me with a multifamily, and I know a lot of agents come with me, hey, do you have multifamily? I say, well, I don't specialize in that, but I know somebody, and you refer that out and you work with them, and but that's the only way you're going to learn. You're not going to learn it in a book. You're not, I mean, because there's so many things in a property. Like we bought a property that, it didn't have fire sprinklers. It was fine for, 20 plus years. And then all of a sudden we had to re-tenant it. Fire department says, nope, you got to put fire sprinklers for the whole thing. That was a $300,000 expense. And the city of Allen changed their property code. So I don't buy any more properties in Allen. So
that's what I mentioned earlier too, is all about the building codes. How old is the building, right? So that's one of the less risk when you have a Class A building because they're newer. So the codes are tentatively, usually not gonna change like overnight, right? But the older the buildings, we call it grandfather in. So they have the old, building codes and not within like handicap, rails, or even the restrooms are built smaller. But nowadays, the new building codes are different, like the office condo, it has to be certain size of the building codes, and that can't change. So that's very important. So moving on, like I say, focus on one or two things. Don't be like me. I'm just kidding. I do everything commercial. No, but then, okay, I want to share a little bit about the site tour that we're going to go out. So you understand when I take you guys on a tour, what you're looking for. This is literally across the street on Legacy. This is a brand new development. The phase 1 has been finished, and now they're about to build phase 2. Okay. So it is called the Legacy Century Life. I don't know if you know, but across the street where we have these new local good coffee shop. Okay. If you pass that, you're going to see a brand new shopping center where there's a tofu house and there's a bunch of restaurants. These are considered Class A. Okay. Class A because it's brand new, it's in a desirable location. And all the materials, the finish out, even when you walk into different restaurants in that shopping center, you can see it's like, wow, this is very modern. It's very nice. And especially when you look at the lease, the tenant, the base rent and all that stuff, it is super expensive. Okay. All right. So this is considered Class A. So I want to share with you, and this is on phase 1. Okay. It's already been fully leased already. It was finished from last year. Consists of 20,000 plus square feet building. As you can see, the lease rate is $38 plus about $9 per square foot for triple nets. Okay, so $47. That means on an average about 2,000 square feet space, you're looking at to pay a monthly rent of over $8,000. $8,000 for a 2,000 square feet space. Okay, so again, the area is very centralized here by 75 and Legacy. So this is a good, desirable location. You can see right there, that's the layout. So that's going to be the building that we're going to tour after lunch. Okay. Location wise, etc. So this is the site plan. when it comes to commercial, especially new developments, sometimes the building is not on there yet, but this is a site plan. So they call it pad sites. Okay. Sometimes when you're looking at leases space for your clients, they can say, well, the pad site's available. So it can customize between lowest is 1,000 square feet to whatever's, size is customized, right? But this is a pad site. Okay. The site plan right there. That's a drawing. So this is for the phase 1 drawing. Yes.
Why it took so long just to get it developed? It's been empty land for so many years. So if you're looking at this is coming up from 75 or the Service Road. Well, that's part of TxDOT. So any developer dealing with TxDOT, we all understand dealing with the government, it takes time, a long time just to get this entranceway. Another thing is here, this is a Legacy Drive. They had to deal with this for turning into the shopping center. So they had to figure out how to create that and get the approval. They got to do the traffic count. They have to put another light. So just a lot of things with this property, but this developer took the time and, was able to get it done. So happy that they have it done because it's close to us for food,
How
but
long does it take?
they've been working on
years?
almost 3+
That's
years.
what I thought. It's over 3 years. It's over 3 years.
It's a group of people.
Group of investors, and that's the norm. Usually when it comes to commercial, you're not just dealing with one person, okay? Because investors, they usually tends to not putting all their eggs in one basket, okay? And they like to partner up. But I learned this throughout the way is that it depends on also ethnicities too. There's some culture that they don't want to partner with anybody. But usually when it comes to investors, even if you're dealing with one person, they tend to have a group behind them. So whenever it comes into contracts or leases and etc., that's why when Charlie reviewed the entity docs, don't be surprised if there's more members or directors in that entity because they don't want to put all the money in, and instead they can invest together and they can invest into multiple properties, right? Because if one goes south, they still have the others. And usually with that kind of group, either they just focus on one type of commercial property or they like to diverse because the market can shift anytime. So when one goes down, they may have the other one that's still stabilized, okay? But here is the second phase. Okay, the second phase, when you go there, outside of the building that we're going to tour, you're going to see there's a vacant lot. So that's going to be the second phase. And they already open for leasing. Okay, I believe it may be almost fully leased already. I'm not sure. But this is the information right here on phase 2. Okay, it's going to be mirror to what phase 1 is. And they're looking to delivery, the end of this year in the fall. So not too far out. Again, lease is $38 plus triple nets. And as you can see, most of the time, the triple nets, it would say estimated because that can change, right? Property taxes and CAM and insurance, that always can change. Because it's new, remember, they give you the TI, $30 to $35 per square footage, right, to build out. Okay, so these are shell building. Half of the building is our pre-lease because it's a very hot location. Again, this is why this is considered as Class A building, okay? Only 7,000 square feet left, okay, out of 14. So building on lot 4, restaurants, they have restaurants and mostly are restaurants. I am loving it because I've been going to all of these restaurants out there and we kind of take turns to go one at a time because we're so tired of the, Yama and all that stuff across the street. It's just like, okay, let's just try the new ones, right? But that's it, our lunch sponsor today, thankfully, because usually there's a cost for the class, but we want to thank our lunch sponsor. It is Titan Title. And here is the thank you slide. Our next class is August 23rd, okay? It's not going to be here. It's going to be hosted at Davis Wong's Bank, First United Bank, okay? Same time from 10 to probably 2 or 3. We're going to take you guys on a tour for 2 different hotels. So the class is going to be in Plano. The tour is actually on 75 and Walnut Hill. Okay, so 2 hotels. We're gonna have hotel investors coming in. We're gonna share with you similar to what we have today every single time we have the workshop. But the special for the next class is we're actually gonna have the hotel franchise company, franchisor, coming in as well. This is one of my contact and connection. So basically, anyone's locally here that wants to go through that franchisor will go through me, and I will connect you guys with a franchisor. They are globally, they have 13 brands under, and they're close to 100 years in business. Okay, so I can't wait to share that. So if you haven't RSVP, please do, because unlike Daniel's office, that bank can only hold 40 people. Okay, otherwise you're going to be sitting out in the hallway. So please RSVP. And again, QA, I hope we answer all your questions. This is my contact. If you need to contact me, there's a QR code. And then let's enjoy lunch. And then we're going to do a tour.